Alright, so before we get started with this video, I just want to make a quick disclaimer that this is not a video deep dive on Superman himself or a deep character analysis, albeit there will be some of that sprinkled in throughout this video, but rather this is a video talking about a culture shift that's happened in America, and I can only presume in other Western countries, that has removed the need for a character like Superman or the want for a character like Superman and have made him kind of unpopular. So if you've come here for a comic movie analysis or some kind of movie analysis, this is not the video for you. However, if you want to hear what I thought about the recent Superman 2025 film, I enjoyed it and I would watch it again. Was it the best movie I've ever seen? No. But I like the characterization of all the characters in the movie and I had a good time, and maybe that's all there is to it. Alright, so for the rest of this video, this will not be a review, so don't complain in the comments. Okay, let's get into the video. When I was growing up, my aunt and uncle gave me a box of DVDs, and tucked inside there were 3 sets of movies that shaped how I saw the world and the person I wanted to become. And those movies were Iron Man, Spider-Man 1 and 2, and the Christopher Reeve Superman films. During my summer breaks away from school, I would watch these endlessly alongside Power Rangers, of course. And like many kids, I fell in love. I swung through the streets with Spider-Man, built advanced technology with Iron Man, and I soared through the skies with Superman. I climbed walls hoping I'd stick. I jumped hoping I'd fly. But it wasn't just play. These characters shaped how I understood heroism. They showed me not just what a hero does, but what a hero is. Each of them influencing a different aspect of the person that I would later become. You see, I've never really had any kind of idols, no celebrities that I looked up to as larger than life, but I did have heroes. And for me, that was Spider-Man and Superman, not just because of their super suits or their alternate identity, but because of Peter Parker and Clark Kent. They helped teach me what it means to be a good person, even when the world isn't. And now that I think about it, I can see why I turned out the way I did.
Let's not have a repeat of our trip to the planetarium. Come on, people, let's stay together, proceed up the steps, and into the building.
Clark! Clark! Are you all right?
I guess I must have fainted.
Fainted? You fainted?
Sorry.
Maybe I should have picked and chosen which characteristics I adopted, but I guess it's too late for that. But anyways, even though I and many others have a deep love for Superman, I've noticed something lately. Whenever I tell people he's my favorite, I get the same response. Isn't he boring? They'll say it's not interesting to watch a character who can do everything. Or worse, they'll say Superman is outdated, that he doesn't work anymore. And honestly, that breaks my heart. Because yes, it's completely valid to love characters with flaws and limitations. That's what makes a character. But to say that Superman doesn't have those, that he lacks complexity, is to misunderstand what makes him powerful in the first place. His strength was never the point. It was always what he chose to do with it. So, with the new Superman movie out, I want to talk about why I love this character and why I think, now, more than ever, we need
Superman.
They can be a great people, Kal-El. They wish to be. They only lack the light to show the way. For this reason above all, their capacity for good, I have sent them you, my only son.
So, who is Superman? Superman was first created in 1938 during the Great Depression by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. The author Jerry Siegel originally said that Superman was meant to represent a champion of the oppressed, a hero for the everyday person suffering in a broken world. Since then, the character has changed a lot, gaining many miraculous abilities from flight to heat vision and near invulnerability. His values became a representation of truth, justice, and the American way, later evolving into something even broader and more inclusive, a symbol of hope. Yet, somewhere along the way, the original idea was lost, or maybe it was just twisted. People stopped caring about heroes like Superman, not because they changed, but because we stopped believing a person like that could even exist. We stopped believing in hope. We stopped believing in good. It's as though the idea of objective morality gave way to something else, something far more self-focused. Not what is right, but what is right for me. So it's no wonder that our media shifted too. In a world where we prioritize personal gain, the idea of someone using their power purely for others feels naive or even suspicious. Because really, if someone had that much power, wouldn't they just become someone like Homelander or another version like Omni-Man? Someone terrifying, not inspiring? That's the assumption now, that power will inevitably corrupt. And to be fair, there's a lot of truth in that. That fear doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a story as old as time, power and corruption. But that's not the only story. It's not impossible to be powerful and good. It's just rare. And that rarity makes it all the more worth telling. In a world that feels so full of darkness, it's more important than ever to turn on the lights, to be the lighthouse guiding lost sailors to shore. We need people willing to spend sleepless nights helping sailors of the sea find their way home. Yet, people have become hopeless. They look at the world's problems and think, I could never fix that, so why even try? And it's not just a feeling, it's real. According to a 2019 Pew Research Center study, 7 in 10 US teens see anxiety and depression as a major problem among their peers, and large shares of Gen Z report feeling overwhelmed by the challenges facing their generation and the uncertainty of the future. Many young people express a sense of paralysis and helplessness, with concerns about whether anything they do will truly make a difference. This sense of futility is not an isolated trend. Gen Z and today's teens are bombarded by news of crisis, uncertainty, and existential dread, while social media echo chambers amplify despair and memes about meaninglessness become a kind of dark comfort zone. Studies show that this generation, more than any before, reports high levels of anxiety, depression, and hopelessness. A reaction not just to some economic instability or climate fears, but to a digital world saturated with negativity and misfortune. As research warns, nihilism is not just a philosophical stance, but it can be a gateway to apathy, isolation, and even extremism, robbing individuals and communities of the agency needed to imagine and build a better world. Yet, hope is not naive. It is not a denial of hardship or a refusal to see reality. As both science and philosophy has shown, hope is a discipline, a muscle that must be exercised, a light that must be tended. It is the conviction that even in the face of overwhelming odds, our actions matter. Hope gives us the will to persist, the courage to try, and the resilience to rise after we fall. Studies from Harvard and the Global Brain Health Institute reveal that hope is linked to better mental health, greater resilience, and improved outcomes in the face of adversity. Hope is not just for the individual, it is a collective force, a fire that can be shared and spread. When we choose hope, we choose to participate in the world, to reach out to others, and to write new stories. Stories of compassion, courage, and change. Without hope, there is only paralysis. With hope, even the smallest act can become a spark that lights the way for others. This is where Superman becomes more than just a character. He becomes a necessary symbol. Superman is a great hero not because he can save the world. That's just his side quest. He's powerful because he's good to the people around him, because he stops to save a cat from a tree, a child from a burning building, a squirrel from getting run over. Superman isn't great because he can save the world. He's great because he chooses to be good even when no one else would be. In All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison, there's this incredible scene where a teenage girl stands on a ledge, ready to jump. The world has let her down. She feels invisible, broken. And just as she's about to fall, Superman appears behind her. He doesn't give her a lecture. He doesn't swoop in with fanfare. He just says, "You're stronger than you think you are. Trust me." Then he holds her. That's it. That's the whole scene. But in those few seconds, in that little scene, we see who Superman truly is. Just someone who sees people, who shows up when it matters most. That's what makes him powerful. Not his strength, but his compassion. We need more people like that. Not ones with super speed or x-ray vision, but people who let others know that they are enough. It's important that we teach our children it's okay to be good, even when it's difficult. That we shouldn't ever be afraid of the repercussions or the judgment that can come from being a good person. No matter who the person is, we should see the good in them and try our best to be good all the same, without the fear of the consequences of being good, even if they reject it, even when it means getting hurt, being wronged, being judged, or feeling so crushed by the weight of the world that giving up seems easier. That's when heroes matter most. That's when they teach us that it's okay to be strong. But how can we expect children to grow up wanting to make the world a better place when all we ever tell them is that the world is against them? Sometimes it's not about shielding kids from reality. It's about giving them hope that there can be a better tomorrow. Because without hope, there can be no life. One of my favorite examples of a character who really captures this idea is not Superman. It's actually All Might from My Hero Academia. In a pivotal scene, he explains why he smiles even in the face of overwhelming fear. When you're scared or worried, that's when you should deal with it with a smile. He becomes a symbol of peace not just because of his strength, but because of the hope he chooses to embody. Because he knows people need to believe in goodness. This is who Superman is and needs to be. This is what our society needs. And what's wild is this isn't some new idea. Our grandparents and great-grandparents knew this. They sacrificed not for status or self-fulfillment, but so their children could live a better life. And yet, now we tell kids just because of where or how or when they were born, they will never matter. When what we should be saying is you matter because you were born, because you exist. Because all that you struggle with and all that you make it through is what makes you human. There is nothing boring about that idea. And Superman teaches us exactly that. It's these day-to-day struggles, each moment we decide to keep going, to simply be there for another person. That's what makes Superman more human than all of us. Psychologists have found that our character and values aren't innate. They're shaped by people who influence us, especially during our formative years. As one study in Curious notes, role models, mentors, and heroes can have a significant impact on adolescents' decisions, attitudes, and behaviors, helping to shape their sense of purpose and moral identity. In other words, we're born human, but nearly everything we become, we learn. From critical thinking to sports to moral courage, it's all taught. We come into this world utterly helpless, and we need other people to become better people. No one is truly independent. Every great trait we gain is because someone, real or fictional, gave it to us as a gift. That's why characters and people like Superman matter. They teach us what it means to be good. As I grew into a boy and later into an adult, Superman shaped my image of what a man could be. And I'll be honest, as a guy more than ever, we need positive male role models. This isn't just nostalgia, it's necessity. Research shows that boys who grow up without consistent, positive male figures are at a higher risk for a host of challenges: lower academic achievement, increased risky behavior, and diminished emotional well-being. Nearly 1 in 4 boys in the US report lacking a steady male role model, and the absence of such figures is linked with higher rates of delinquency and emotional struggle. But when boys have access to healthy male mentors, fathers, teachers, coaches, or even a fictional hero, they're more likely to thrive. They show greater happiness, resilience, and self-esteem, and are less likely to engage in risky or violent behavior. But true strength isn't about independence or dominance. It's about doing your best every day and accepting love from others even when it's hard. When society tears down masculinity, it leaves a void, and a void that is quickly filled by extreme hollow versions of strength. Then we judge the men who are pulled in by them without asking why. Often they're drawn not by the cruelty, but of the hope of finding a strong place to stand, to look for those role models and mentors. But that hope is misplaced. People like Superman show us the real deal: strength used to heal, to protect, to uplift. But now when I turn on the TV or stream a new show, I keep seeing the same recycled archetype: the dumb, lazy, emotionally stunted guy. He's the joke, the sidekick, the muscle with no mind. And look, there's nothing wrong with these characters existing and being created. There are plenty of real guys in real life who are awkward, messy, ridiculous, or just downright stupid. But the problem is when it becomes all that there is, when the only version of masculinity that is allowed is to show its incompetence. What's worse is how often beloved legacy characters, icons who once stood for strength, discipline, and virtue get rewritten just to be shadows of themselves. Thor becomes a running joke, Hulk becomes whatever Hulk is now, and then Joel from The Last of Us gets a character change. This isn't character growth, it's narrative sabotage. We don't need to tear down male characters so other characters can shine. Some of the greatest female leads in my favorite movies are Ripley from Alien and Beatrix in Kill Bill, and they earn their place by being strong, not by being surrounded by a bunch of weak people or weak men. It's all about the fact that they were actually strong. In fact, strong male characters don't just help boys, they show everyone, even young women, what masculinity looks like, what a good man looks like. Now, maybe this degradation mostly affects people who are terminally online, maybe people in real life are more balanced or more nuanced, but our media matters. It reflects what we believe about the world. That's why we need adults and stories that model real strength with heart. Superman doesn't just have power, he knows what to do with it. He's strong and gentle, powerful and vulnerable, a man and a hero. That's the kind of role model we, and especially boys, need. And if we keep telling ourselves and kids that men are dumb, weak, disposable, and that characters like Superman are outdated or even harmful, then we're heading in the wrong direction. Superman is a representation of traditional values. And I get it. Every time someone says traditional values, I feel like I'm waiting for someone to be like, oh my gosh, they're talking about oppressive or outdated norms. But that's not what that actually means. And when I talk about traditional values, I'm talking about what Superman shows us. Doing what's right, no matter what. Not because it's easy or popular or praised, but because it's right, because his morals are aligned to what is good. He's not driven by power or ego, he's guided by driving principles. He's strong and uses that strength to protect anyone who needs it. Superman's job may be to save the world, but the normal guys among us can still learn from him to be strong for the world around them, for the women and children and the communities around us, to stand up, to care, to lead by example. Yet, try living like that as a man today and you get risked being called a beta or a simp or corny for showing kindness or restraint, and that mockery comes from both ends. Yes, the hyper macho camps, but also from the voices convinced that any man who cares is automatically suspicious. But Superman example tells us a different story. If you knew you are loved, not one of you would raise a hand in rage again. That's not weakness, that is power, that is courage. And here's what the research shows. Prioritizing those values, family, compassion, responsibility, makes people happier and healthier. A 2025 Pew Research Center study showed that 71% of Americans say participating in countries' traditions remains an important part for their national identity, even as the emphasis on these values has declined over recent decades. Across more than 20 countries surveyed, a median of 81% say sharing customs and traditions is important for true belonging. Even as the world changes, people instinctively know and recognize the need for those very virtues. Superman embodies loyalty, self-restraint, and a sense of duty to others. Moreover, in long-term studies, it's indicated that strong family ties and caring for others are linked to a higher life satisfaction, better mental health, and even longer lives. For example, research among Chinese adolescents found a significant positive correlation between traditional values, familialism, humility, respect, and mental health, highlighting that these values are not just cultural relics, but living sources of resilience and well-being. In the Philippines and elsewhere, qualitative research has shown that traditional beliefs and customs foster a sense of identity and community, buffering individuals against stress and anxiety. So why do we act like these values are dead? Because we left Superman behind. We've replaced timeless pillars with trendy tropes, reducing morality to cliches and compassion to weakness. And it's not just in entertainment. Studies show a pronounced decline in the importance placed on values like patriotism, religion, and community. A Wall Street Journal / North poll found that only 38% of Americans now say patriotism is very important to them, down from 70% in 1998. And only 39% say religion is very important compared to 69% a generation ago. Community involvement and having children have also declined in perceived importance, while the only priority that has grown is money. Meanwhile, as traditional structures like marriage, parenting, faith decline, so do the values of responsibility, sacrifice, and community that rise alongside them. Sociologists have observed that when these mediating institutions weaken, people turn inward, losing the habits of fellowship and reciprocity that once formed the backbone of society. This isn't just about nostalgia, it's about what shapes our society's moral backbone. Superman's values aren't relics, they're cornerstones, values that once underpinned stability, trust, and unity. But Superman's values aren't obsolete, they're timeless: truth, justice, and hope. Simply being good no matter the burden. They shine just as brightly today when so much of culture tells us that kindness is weakness and power must dominate. We need to keep portraying these values as real, modern, and essential. That's not outdated, that's urgently needed. That's why I think we've started asking the wrong questions about Superman. It's not how can he be good, it's that he simply is, and he chooses to be every single day. That's the point. Superman's power isn't what makes him remarkable. What truly sets him apart is that with all the strength in the world, he chooses restraint. He chooses kindness, and he chooses to put others first again and again. In a world where morality often feels negotiable and goodness is just another brand to sell, that choice has never been more vital. How does someone who is truly good survive in a world that only values what's good for themselves, when doing good for one person sometimes means standing alone or even against the tide? That's always been the real question at the heart of a Superman story. Too often, instead of facing that tension, storytellers tried to write around it. They created new heroes or accepted what Lex Luthor has always argued, that Superman isn't really one of us, that he can never be. But the truth is, the story has never been about how strong he is. It's always been about how, despite everything, he chooses to stay good. I made this video not because I think we need a new Superman movie every single year, although I'll admit I would enjoy that, but because we can't afford to abandon a character like Superman. If we do, we risk abandoning something even greater. Hope. Hope for a better tomorrow. Hope for the next generation. Hope that we won't lose the values that make us human. So whether that means we keep telling Superman's story, create new heroes, or simply strive to be a little more like him for the people around us, let's not forget why we need Superman. Because sometimes what saves the world isn't super strength, it's the unwavering choice to believe in the good and to be it. At the end of the day, Superman can't save everyone, but we can.
Leave it. Ow, ow, stop. Ow, stop. Krypto, ow, ow, stop it, stop. Sit, stay.